What is the best state for concealed carry? That's what we're going to be looking at today. We're going to be looking throughout the top 50 states in the union and seeing which ones are the best for concealed carriers. Now, if you Google this, right, you're going to inevitably come across a ton of different lists, right, and a ton of different parameters that people will use to judge the best concealed carry state. I think I found the best one through ammo.com because they take more of a collective approach to figuring out what is the best state for concealed carry. So they start with the philosophical divide. How does your state treat you, not only if you have to buy a gun, but if you have to use that gun in self-defense? That can be wildly different across the country. They also look at the current gun laws. They look at CCW guidelines. They look at sales tax. They look at the governor's stance on the Second Amendment as well. So I'm going to be using ammo.com to come up with our top 5, or use their top 5, and then I'm going to compare and contrast that to the USCCA, see if we see any kind of discrepancies, or whether or not, one state should not be on that list or as high as they are, because number 1 is seriously surprising. It was surprising to me. Let's go ahead and get into it. Number 5 is Mississippi. So if you're 18 or older, you can open carry in the state, and then of course you can apply for your concealed carry weapons license after an 8-hour class. That's going to give you reciprocity with 35 other states. Mississippi actually recognizes all the other 50 states for concealed carriers. Now you can also apply for an enhanced permit, which will give you access to otherwise restricted areas. Now they do have sales tax in this state, but sometimes they'll run special things where firearms and ammo are exempt from sales tax, so sometimes throughout the year you can get these things a little bit cheaper. They also talk about the governor, Tay Reeves. He's Pro 2A, and he recently signed a bill that will prevent tracking devices and registries on firearms. Now let's look at the USCCA, see if we see any kind of discrepancies that would knock Mississippi off of the list here. Some of the basic things that I want to look at is their population and how many permits that they have issued. So 3 million people live in the state of Mississippi, 47,000 permits have been issued, and you have to be 21 to get that concealed carry permit. That comes out to 1.5% of the population actually has a permit, and those permits are good for 4 to 5 years. Now there's a couple more things I want to look at in each state. First of all, do you have a duty to inform an officer when you're pulled over? No. But interestingly enough, your driver's license or your concealed weapons permit is linked to your driver's license in this state. Kind of defeats the purpose. I'm going to make a separate video all about that though, so make sure you be on the lookout for that one. Also, can they enforce no concealed carry allowed on this premise, or you know what I'm talking about. Yes, businesses can keep you from carrying a firearm in their business, so some states will actually put statutes that prohibit this or enforce this. It is enforceable in Mississippi. Now concealed carry, it's kind of all in the name. That's highly dependent upon them actually finding that out, of course. Now I know people may ask about red flag laws, which doesn't really have a lot to do with what we're talking about here, but regardless, every single one of these states, there's no red flag laws, there's no waiting period, none of the other crap that you'll find in some of the worst states for concealed carriers and gun owners in general. The last thing I do want to look at though, is there a protection for employees, because some state statutes will actually protect employees that keep a gun locked in their vehicle. This state actually does protect you as an employee. Most of us get up, we go to work every single day. We want to have our gun obviously at least locked in our vehicle, so a business cannot prohibit you as a gun owner from keeping that gun locked in your vehicle when you're at work. Now let's move on to the next state, which is Montana. What a big, beautiful state that it seems to be, man. And so somewhere I definitely want to visit at some point. Let's see why ammo.com says they're a good state for concealed carry. Well, Montana is another open carry state. There's no sales tax there, and you can get your concealed weapons permit and be able to carry in 34 other states. Montana only recognizes 43 other states, and one of those, most of them you would think, okay, yeah, they wouldn't recognize California, Washington, Oregon, whatever. But one of them is actually my state that they don't recognize, South Carolina. Trust me, South Carolina, which is again the state I live in, is going to come up in future conversations because it's highly disappointing. Montana also has a use of force policy which can protect their citizens if they have to use deadly force and it's justified. I also talk about the governor in Montana is about as pro 2A as you can get. Now let's look at the USCCA and compare and contrast, Montana, maybe even to Mississippi, and look at some of the parameters in Montana that make it unique. So a big old state like that with 1.1 million people, man, that sounds fantastic, dude. Plenty of open land. It just looks absolutely beautiful there. What is interesting is they actually have 14,000 more permit holders than Mississippi does with a lot less people in it, right? So 61,000 permits issued in Montana, which is 5.5% of the population. Of course, that's not including people that are open carrying where you don't have to have a permit. So a fairly protected state by its citizens, I would say. And then also 18 is the minimum for concealed carry compared to 21 in Mississippi. Sorry, these lights are starting to bug me, so I had to get my glasses. But in Montana, you are protected if you have to visit a motel, hotel. The landlord or owner of that property can't prohibit you as a gun owner from going on those premises. No weapon signs are not enforced in Montana either. You also have no duty to inform, but your driver's license is linked to your concealed weapons permit. Overall, I'd say this is a fantastic state for concealed carriers. Number 3 is Arkansas, and so this state is very similar to Mississippi in some of its laws. 21 is the minimum to conceal carry, but at 18 they have permitless carry. They'll do sales tax exemptions, but most of the year you're going to have to pay sales tax on firearms and ammo. What's interesting about this state, first of all, they have a very pro 2A governor, but second of all, they have a population the same as Mississippi with a lot more permit holders. 217,000 compared to the 47,000 we saw in Mississippi. Now again, this doesn't include people that are open carrying in these states either, but that's a good indication that more people are carrying or concealed carrying, obviously, in Arkansas than they are in Mississippi. And that equates to 7.2% of the population with a permit, and those licenses are good for 5 years. They also have reciprocity with 37 other states. Now, you do have a duty to inform in Arkansas if you're a concealed carry permit holder. You don't if it's permitless carry, okay? And your CCW is linked to your driver's license. Other state statutes don't specify whether you can carry at a hotel and be banned from the premises or not. Also, you're protected as an employee in Arkansas. They cannot prohibit you from carrying a gun and keeping it in your locked vehicle as long as you are, the owner of that gun and all that kind of stuff. Also, I didn't mention this, but in Montana, that statute is not specified whether it protects employees or not from keeping a gun locked in their vehicle. Number 2 is an interesting one. This is West Virginia. And so anybody over the age of 21 that can legally own a gun can apply for their permit. But if you're 18, you can actually, apply for a provisional permit. You can carry in 38 other states once you pass the West Virginian, safety course for firearms. As of July 2021, most firearms and ammo are actually exempt from sales tax, which is pretty cool, man. Your guns are cheaper up there. They do say there's some exceptions. I'm not sure what those are, but if you live in West Virginia, hell, let us know. Otherwise, your firearms are cheaper up there. Another big one, their governor, Jim Justice, signed a bill recently that will allow a CHL holder to carry on campus. That is a fantastic move in the right direction. This is another interesting one. They have 1.8 million people in the state and 147,000 permits are issued. So that's 8% of the population with a concealed carry permit. Now, they don't have a statute that specifies whether you can, be banned from a hotel, but they do have a statute in place protecting employees, again, as long as you can own that gun and, it's locked in your vehicle, out of sight, and all that kind of stuff. Now, you have no duty to inform an officer that you're carrying, nor is your license linked. So this is one of the first states where we've seen that. But West Virginia State Police have a CHL database that can tell them whether you're a concealed carry or not. So I guess it depends on who you get pulled over, whether, they will just find out that information or they won't. And they do not enforce no weapons allowed signs in that state. Now here is number one, which is the biggest shocker to me personally, New Hampshire, which sits in the midst, behind enemy lines, if you will, as far as when it comes to gun rights and concealed carry. They're amongst a bunch of states that are super restrictive. New Hampshire, very laxed and very low crime rates as well. As long as you're over the age of 18 and you can own a firearm, you can carry openly or concealed without a permit. Now, if you do decide to get a permit in that state, well, then you can actually travel to 29 other states with that permit. But they do say that you don't have to go through safety, processes and fingerprinting and all this stuff to obtain a permit. Of course, in order, to purchase a firearm, you got to go through, the 4473 NICS and all that kind of stuff. But regardless, as far as the permit requirements, they don't have an 8-hour class or any kind of stringent testing you have to do. They also have no sales tax, and their governor signed legislation recently that prohibits law enforcement from infringing on the constitutional rights of their citizens, which is pretty freaking awesome. Now, let's look at them on the map and see, any other pertinent information we can gather from New Hampshire. Now, not surprisingly, they have a population of 1.7 million and only 24,000 permits are issued. But again, when you don't have to go through the rigmarole of getting a permit, and especially if you don't travel a whole lot, well, there you go. You don't have to have a permit. And some of the states they would have to go through to come down further south are a little more hostile to them anyways. So I guess people just, when they travel out of state, they don't really worry about it. I don't know. It's kind of an interesting thing. They're a diamond in the rough, if you will, when it comes to gun rights. Now, their state statutes don't specify rights for employees nor the hotel thing. And interestingly enough, no duty to inform. Your CCW isn't linked to your driver's license, and no weapon signs are not enforced up there. So, what do you think about this list, man? I find it very interesting. I was thinking Alaska was going to be number one on this list, and some of the other states, but Texas I thought was going to be right there. But the way they approach this, ammo.com anyways, I think is a more comprehensive look, because you don't want to overlook, how a governor obviously governs in your state, because that can affect you more than, anything. A governor can strike down, federal laws, from being enforced in your state. So governors are very important. And so, obviously, like we talk about, voting is very important for your state to be a good concealed carry state, or a good state for gun owners in general. I have some other videos on the topic that I'm going to link right here in card, so if you want to check those out, make sure you do that. Big thanks to you guys. See you in the next one, and as always, hold them down.